Welcome to the Locker Into Boardroom podcast. My name is Ryan Blake. I'm the founder and director of Ryan Blake Performance Coaching, as well as a host of this show. The mission of this is to empower high-performing sports industry executives and directors to elevate their leadership through enhanced mindset, well-being, and lifestyle solutions, helping minimise stress and maximise fulfilment to reach peak performance by leveraging the insights, experiences, and strategies of real-world professionals. The vision of this is to become a go-to resource for sports industry leaders, providing actionable strategies to overcome challenges and solve problems without sacrificing personal priorities, aiming to cultivate a community of sports executives and directors who can effectively bridge the gap between sports and business leadership, ultimately living better to lead better. In this episode, I'm speaking with Si Nicholson. Si is a professional engineer and officer in the Army, as well as an elite snowboard coach. We discuss what leadership means to him, the best example of leadership he's come across, what he considers the cost of bad leadership to be, what parts does he consider mindset, well-being and lifestyle to play in leadership, what's his key piece of advice to make someone a better leader, as well as much more. Right, let's get started. Si, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. Please, can you start by telling everyone a little bit more about you, your background, and your professional experience, please?
Ryan, thanks for having me. So, background, I started off with a career in the military as a professional engineering officer after studying mechanical engineering, where we met, actually, certainly within the student union and in the ski and snowboard club, where we went on a few holidays together. So that was great, and obviously now we come back here and we're so far on in terms of our friendship and our relationship and what we've done in life. So I did 10 years. I went to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, a whole year training academy, probably the most arduous year I've ever had in my life. I slept less that year than I ever have done since or before. So it was a tough year, and that prepared me for that career in the Army. And I did various operations and over exercises during that time. So during that time, also the Army is quite positive about professional sports people, and I was pretty good at snowboarding. And essentially, as far as I was concerned, snowboarding after university was pretty much it. You know, I dabbled, but I did it for my enjoyment. But it did turn out that I was actually pretty good, probably better than I thought. And after going to the Army Snowboard Championships, I ended up winning that. And off the back of that, they sent me to the Inter-Services, which is the RAF Navy and RAF Navy and Army. And they compete against each other, and I won that. So off the back of that, they sent me to the Combined Services. Not the Combined Services, the British Championships. And I ended up doing really well on that. And as a consequence, got selected for the GB snowboard team in snowboard cross. So snowboard cross is the one where 4 snowboarders race down a track at the same time, round berms, over jumps. So really, really exciting stuff. And so we did. So I got invited along, and I'm like, this is great. I've got this invitation, but there's no possible way I can kind of escape a career in the Army to go and do this. But then I was like, well, you know what? The Army does support elite athletes, so I'm going to try. I'm going to ask the question. So I asked my boss. I was like, listen, this thing's come up. What about it? And Colonel Si Waddington at the time, he was just like, yeah, I think this is awesome. You should go for it. So that was it. So, and then for the next 3 years, I basically became a professional snowboarder. 6 months over each winter, I would go and train with the GB team, and then I'd come back, do a little bit of work, and I was technically known as a tracksuit soldier, where I spent more time in the tracksuit than I did actual soldiering. And that was fine. So it was a great period where I was traveling around Europe and competing against some of the best snowboarders in the world, getting coached by some amazing coaches, and got to join the Australian snowboard cross team as well, and spend some time with them. But then I was like, right, this is really tough. I was a little bit older in terms of the bell curve than my peers, and I did get to a stage where I recognised that I didn't feel that I would be able to achieve the Olympics I just felt I started too late. I don't know, it was one of those sliding doors moments, but I kind of made that mental decision to continue with my professional career. So that's where I kind of stopped. But the love of snowboarding carried on. And I then subsequently decided to leave the army after 10 years. And in terms, as I began to gain additional qualifications to prepare me to leave and to begin a new life outside, I undertook and got all my civilian snowboard qualifications, coaching qualifications. So I essentially I now have the highest in terms of the amount of qualification you can get as a snowboard coach in the world is the highest qualification. So that was great, and and leaving the army, I was like absolutely tunnel visioned. I was going to set up a business in snowboard cross, creating a grassroots program to help bring junior athletes into the GB program. Because in the UK at the time, there was nothing like that. And there was no way for young athletes to be able to make the leap from recreational snowboarder into professional team. So I created the first ski and snowboard cross club in the UK, and we based it in Manchester, and it was great. It was fantastic. But in parallel with that, so I met a couple of para snowboarders, and they were out in Austria, and it was my final army snowboard championships, and we were all out in a resort called Stubai, which is near Innsbruck, and we're in a local pub called the Dorf, and everyone kept saying, "You got to meet these two para athletes." I was like, "Okay, great." And these para athletes, everyone kept saying to these para athletes, "You got to meet Si." And it was very serendipitous. The team had just been newly formed. They were looking for a coach. And it just so happened that I was leaving the army at exactly the right time in order to become a professional snowboard cross coach, the only one in the UK at the time. So it was like a perfect meeting. And we met up. We had a few drinks. I ended up drinking beer out of Owen's prosthetic leg. And the bond was born, and we basically struck up this relationship, this friendship, and I got a phone call from the performance director of the team, and that was pretty much my interview, and then that's how I became the GB Paralympic snowboard coach. So that was the next 5 years of my life, traveling around the world with this team, trying to get them to the Paralympics and trying to win some medals. So we ended up going to the Winter Paralympics in South Korea, in Pyeongchang, which was an amazing experience, multiple world championships. And in parallel with that, I then started studying a master's degree in performance coaching. So that was fascinating. It was done through Stirling University. And the idea being that it was you study in parallel with your job, and all of your assignments are related to the actual job. So it was the best context-based learning I could possibly want. So that was it. And so then a few years went by. I left in 2019, just before COVID. Set up a business to help athletes, teach athletes how to get sponsored. And then after that, I then rejoined the army, and that's where I am now, working full-time army, but as a reservist, so an army reservist, but on a full-time contract. And still passionate about snowboarding, still passionate about leadership, still passionate about helping people. And I think that's pretty much just in a nutshell, mate. All caught up.
Brilliant. What a great introduction. Thank you for sharing that. So with all of your experience and all of the different things you've done, what does leadership now mean to you?
Leadership for me is, there's a few different components. You've got leadership and you've got followership. And I think the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. To be a good leader, sometimes you also have to be a good follower. But let's focus on leadership first, because as a leader and the leadership, being a leader is about self, leadership is about others. So being a leader, let's focus on being a leader as opposed to leadership. A leader, obviously I've had a great deal of experience in leading in terms of being educated as a leader, and having opportunities to lead. And leading is incredibly tough. It's probably the most complex of tasks, because it's for some people it comes naturally. For some people you have to go and work at it. And for me, leading is it's a layering of different skill sets. It's not necessarily just something that you are, it's something you can learn. But I think fundamentally the most important thing about leading is vision. You've got to know where you're trying to get. You have to have a clear image in your mind, because if you can't see where you're trying to get to, how are you going to be able to convince other people to then also want to get to where you want to go? So when we talk in the army about leading, quite often this is ring fenced in terms of a mission. You have a mission and you talk to your soldiers and say, this is what we've been told to achieve. The intent is to deliver a certain effect in order to X, Y, and Z. And you then have to sell this idea. So when we start talking about leadership and leading, you're looking at vision, but also you're talking about the ability to sell that vision. So you're already kind of identifying different skills here. Sales is a series of skills that can be learned, which you have to learn, because sales is life. You've got to be able to sell ideas no matter what you do. So you've got to sell this idea, you've got to sell this vision. And then once you have that ability to sell an idea and get people to follow that idea, I think that's ultimately what leadership is about for me. Because leading is, I suppose you could say, a sliding scale. You've got the autocratic, do this now, and then you've got that other end of the scale where people will just do what you need them to do to achieve that aim, because you've sold that vision well enough. And that's probably where we want to get to eventually. But initially, here you've got to be like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing, this is why we're doing it. And this is the other thing, is that you've got to have a really strong why. It's all well and good saying this is what we're doing, but if somebody turns around and goes, well, why? So you've got to have a compelling reason for why people are going to try to achieve that. And I suppose you can kind of tap into you look at Simon Sinek with his, start with why. That's pretty critical, because individually, people that you lead are all going to have their own kind of backgrounds. They're going to have their own biases. They're going to be motivated in different ways. So then you've got to understand people. And I think this is another skill set which must be learned as a leader in order to lead, is empathy. Empathy for me is probably the most critical skill of a leader, because empathy is the idea of putting yourself into somebody else's shoes to understand exactly what they're feeling in that moment, understanding what motivates them, understand exactly what fears they have, what they're trying to achieve, where are they trying to go. And if you can tap into that and really see the world through their eyes, then it becomes far easier to be able to communicate with them your vision, your ideas, because you can change your words, the way you describe what you're saying, so it fits their narrative. And whilst briefing a whole group of people is easy, quite often you might need to actually talk to individuals and just say, I appreciate this, and I appreciate you think that, or you believe that, or you might see that, but you can understand where I need you and where you fit into this. And so again, we talk about leader, and lead as a leader. To be a competent leader, I truly believe it's just a series of skills that must be learned and led upon led, and then leading is the actual application of those skills based on empathy and knowing what people need. So that really kind of very much a kind of a loose structure. I think it's very hard. I don't like these textbook definitions, or transformational leadership and transactional leadership, because they don't mean boggle to anyone. I probably know more about leadership by learning marketing And I say that in a very honest way, because marketing, what is marketing? It's trying to get people to do what you want through some kind of communication. Okay, you're trying to get somebody to take action. But if you look at any blog, any book about marketing, and you delete marketing and you insert leadership, and the definitions are almost identical. And I found that actually by learning marketing, I inherently became a better leader, because marketing is about aggressive empathy. In order to do marketing well, you have to understand your customer incredibly deeply. You have to understand their fears, their motivations, their drives. You have to understand exactly how the product you're selling, your idea, your vision, is going to help them. It's going to solve their problem. And breaking it down into features and benefits. And so marketing, I feel, if a leader was to study marketing, it would inherently allow them and naturally help them develop the skills to become a better leader. And the same with sales. Sales is the verbal communication. It's about overcoming objections and resistance, convincing somebody. And again, sales is an incredibly complex skill, which can be learned. So to be a good leader, I don't think anyone is particularly a great leader naturally, but I think some leaders are incredibly good at recognizing that in order to be a good leader, you must learn skills that perhaps sit outside of the typical kind of leadership books you might read.
Fascinating. I love how you're breaking that down and the little twists that you've put in there, because they make so much sense, but they're not often always thought about in that way. So with all of your experience, are there any examples of leadership, good leadership, that stand out to you?
Probably a little bit contentious right now, but I'm going to bring up Donald Trump. Why is he a good leader? Or is he a good leader? He is a leader. Okay, I think you can't deny that. In the same way as, okay, I'm going to draw maybe the wrong parallel, but in the same way as Hitler was a leader. Was he a great leader or wasn't he? History history would suggest he managed to lead very well, but actually, when you look at the detail, Hitler wasn't a particularly impressive person, but he was in a position where he was able to exploit the fears of other people. So, in the sense that he was a leader, he perhaps nefarious leader, yes, manipulator, yes, but he was a leader. Trump is a leader. Good leadership. What is good leadership? I suppose leadership is down to vision. So, what is a vision? What is a good vision? What is a good outcome? What is somebody? And a leader may not be popular for the decisions they have to make, but the reason why they make those decisions might be for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So for Hitler, okay, he was did horrible things, but actually he had this vision of this kind of beautiful Germany with lots of space to grow, families and space, and he was very angry at Germany and the position economically it was in at the time. He was angry about the outcome of the First World War. So he truly believed that he could deliver Germany to a better place. The hows and ways, the means that he did it, obviously very, very horrible, very, very horrible. But he had this belief that he could take people to a better place. And I think in the same sense, believes he can take people and deliver people to a better place. And I think that's really what it fundamentally is about. You've got, to draw a different parallel. The Pope, is the Pope a good leader? He's a leader. He's a leader of the Catholic Church, but actually, is he leading? Is he getting people to do what he wants them to do? Has he got a brighter vision? Yeah, arguably he does. He does have a vision of what he wants, but what he lacks is perhaps the does he lack? I mean, this is a really, really clever and very complicated question, because what you're trying to say is, because ultimately, what is a leader trying to achieve? You know, there's Greta Thunberg, from the environmental. Is she a leader? Yes, she is. I mean, she mobilized people to get, and she wasn't very popular. I mean, she pissed a lot of people off, excuse my language. Okay, she really didn't. She's not very popular. I mean, I know Trump hates Greta. Maybe not personally, but certainly as a, she's the brunt of many jokes. But actually, Greta Thunberg, she believed in something passionately. And I think that's fundamentally what it's all about. A good leader has to be passionate about the thing that they believe in. They have and they have to be vocal, and they have to be prepared to upset people. But ultimately, they're doing it for a bigger, a higher purpose. So whilst you can kind of draw on so many great leaders, Simon Sinek is another great thought leader. Ray Dalio is another great business thought leader. There's so many fantastic leaders out there, and I think it's probably worth understanding that it's all well and good going, that person's a good leader, that person's a good leader, but it doesn't necessarily help you become a better leader.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about people who have kind of are in that 0.1% of the population. But we can all be competent leaders. But I think ultimately, if we can draw one lesson from all of these people we talked about, it's simply having a vision and being passionate about something.
Yeah.
And if you make that your life purpose, and this is the thing, these all people have all made it their life purpose. It's all been that central core, the central thing that drives them. If you can kind of understand who you are and what cause you want to attach yourself to, then everything else becomes relatively easy, because every time you talk, be passionate about it. You're gonna like use big hand gestures. And people are naturally attracted to people who are passionate about things. Leadership becomes far easier. But just try and find something that's less nefarious than Hitler.
No one's ever given that answer before. By the way,
it's quite random.
Yeah, but
years on my head, but it's such a challenging topic that you've kind of brought up, and bring in a different perspective. And again, naturally, I'll go to perhaps political leaders and war heroes because of my job and my background, and we do a lot of studies on leaders, and I think it's very much up to the individual to interpret who is a good leader, who isn't, who do you want after. And who do you kind of observe? And one of the great actors, who was it? It was in Inglourious Bastards, I think, and it was the Nazi hunter, and he played an incredible role, incredible. And one journalist asked him, "So how were you so convincing as that Nazi? You were so evil, and you played evil so well." And he answered, he looked amused. He looked kind of a little confused. He's like, "But I wasn't evil. I truly believed that the character. I truly believed what I was doing was right." So it's all about perspective.
Love it. Great take on that, Si. Thank you for sharing it. So we're going to completely turn this on its head now. So what do you think the cost of bad leadership can be?
Why do you get a bad leader? A bad leader can be a bad leader for many different reasons. It could be a bad leader because you have a victim personality. Okay, this is a you problem. If you feel you go into work every day, everything's happening to you. Your boss is always on your case. You're going to perceive somebody as a bad leader. Okay, and arguably they are, but they can't help you change your mindset necessarily if if you are constantly in that victim mentality where the world is against you, everybody hates you, you know, you hate your job, you're stuck in your job, you're always going to go into a situation with a negative. Now, arguably, it's then that leader's job to be able to understand you, understand your mindset. And this is where a bad leader could be interpreted as a bad leader, but not necessarily. Now, Steve Jobs was to some an absolute horrible person to work for. He was demanding. He was the expectations that everybody would create exceptional work. He drove people to exceptional standards, but he also pushed a lot of people away because he was so exacting. And when people didn't meet his high expectations, he would let them know in a rage of fury. So if you were somebody, I suppose in a lot of people talking about A player, if you're an A player, you're going to take that on as a challenge. You can say, no, he's right. I can do better. That's a better standard. You're not going to say, oh, he's horrible. He bullies me. And you're going to say, this is a challenge. You're going to see those boulders in front as stepping stones to get to become a better version of yourself. So good leader, bad leader. I think a bad leader inherently could be somebody who has personal issues themselves. I don't think anyone gets out of bed in the morning in order to become a bad leader, in order to make people upset, in order to do a bad job. I don't think anybody is motivated to do that. I think common decency and just self-awareness. Most people go into their job to try and do a good job. So this is where worldviews will clash. Somebody may a bad leader might go into their job in order to try and do a good job, and they may be feeling all kinds of different pressures. Okay, they've got directors which they need to report to. They've got directors who are demanding higher standards. The share price might be down, or we've got this customer who's demanding this, and the order was wrong, and therefore they've got all this incoming. And what do they do with that as a manager, as a leader? Of course, the only thing they can do is try to sort out what is important and then try to push that down and say, right, well, that person, they messed up that order, so I need to tell them. So a bad leader isn't necessarily a bad leader. It's perhaps somebody who doesn't have the necessary skills in order to achieve the outcome in a way that brings everybody along together and gets everybody moving in the same direction. And I think that's probably the skill of a leader is that ability to manage a lot of complexity, managing their own workload, as well as being able to take themselves out of that stressful space to be able to emphasize with somebody else. Because that person who messed up the order, they might have had a migraine that day, or they might have had the child might have been ill that day and they had to leave early, and so they couldn't, or it could have been an IT issue or something like that. Now, if that boss comes in and starts ranting and raving, you got that thing wrong, suddenly that person goes, yeah, but it wasn't, but I don't care what you think, I don't care what your excuses are. And immediately that person is perceived as a bad boss, but they're not intentionally being trying to be a bad boss. They're just trying to deal too much, and they don't necessarily have the right skills. So I think it's probably important to get away from good leader, bad leader. It's leaders who have the skill sets to be able to be effective, but also employees who are able to then practice empathy themselves and put themselves into the position of the boss. Quite often in the army, we talk it leading upwards or managing upwards. Sometimes you might not always get that person in charge of you, who's in a position of authority, who has those skills, and then you have to then, as a person, as a human being, recognize somebody else's limitations and just help them. Because if they're under the cosh, okay, perhaps there's something you can do in order to make their life easier. Put yourself in their shoes, walk a mile in their shoes. What is it that you can do to help them be a better person, a better leader, go to then make your life a little bit easier and everybody else's life a bit easier? And at that point, maybe you're going to be in that position. So what would that feel like if you're in their job, doing their job? And a lot of people wouldn't want that job simply because of that pressure. So that's probably in summary. Let's get away from good leader, bad leader. I think there's just more effective leaders. Okay, simply through the skill sets they have developed over time.
Yeah, great, love it. Really, really like that perspective. And it's the good and bad is unfortunately where most people go, isn't it? They don't so often explore the effective versus ineffective, even though that's probably more important. So with everything, we've spoken about this a lot, with everything I currently do, so working with sports execs, sports directors, sports coaches, helping them become better leaders, ultimately by living better. So the three key pillars that we work on, or I work on with that cohort, are improving mindset, improving well-being, and improving lifestyle. So the question here is, what parts do you consider mindset, well-being, lifestyle to play in leadership?
Mindset, number one. It all begins with you.
Yep.
You have dominion over your life. You always have a choice. And mindset it is about holistically going away and reading, learning, developing new skills. It might be meditating. It's about having the discipline to do the things that you know will make you well. It's developing those skill sets and practicing those skill sets. We will constantly be learning till the day we die. We know nothing. We can strive to know a little bit more than we did yesterday, but ultimately we will never know everything there is to know. So we have to constantly have the mindset where we will seek knowledge and be curious about the world, about people, about life. So mindset, absolutely. Wellness is, for me, when I interpret it, it's about self-care. It's about being kind to yourself, being kind to your family, being kind to your co-workers, doing things for you as well as for others, taking time for yourself when you need it. I think a great way. Who said it? But I heard someone say, "I'm here for me, so I can be there for you." I'm here for me. So make time for yourself to recover, to relax, so you can be your best self. Because if you deplete all your energy, your mental reserves, helping other people all the time, you end up with compassion fatigue. And I know your sports coaches experience this a great deal. Yeah. Compassion fatigue, where you just constantly helping, and you get to the point where you're like, just lift the bloody weight. Yeah. Why can't you? And you just get an outburst of just. and as soon as you said those words, you can't get them back. But
I've been there. Yeah.
And it's tough. It's horrible. And immediately you catch yourself. You're like, I'm so sorry. It's just one of those days. At least I hope. Hopefully they do. So wellness. Just look after yourself, whether it be hydration, nutrition, fitness, meditation. Whatever it might be, spending time with friends and family regularly, scheduling it in, just looking after yourself so you can be there for others. Be there for you so you can be there for other people. And then finally, sorry, what's the last one?
Lifestyle.
I suppose that could kind of cross into many different areas. Lifestyle could be, again, it could tie into your fitness, how you balance life. It could be addictions. It could be nutrition. I think the hard thing with all of this is that we all know what we should be doing, but quite often we don't do it because we're too busy or it's not a priority. It's like you only go to the gym if you get. I know a lot of people who would only go to the gym if they got a health scare. A friend of mine got diagnosed. His cholesterol was through the roof, so he fixed his diet, and now he eats healthily all the time. The fear, it became a priority.
Yeah, sure.
Fitness only becomes a priority for a lot of people when suddenly you either find yourself to the point where you really are overweight or have a serious medical condition. Type 2 diabetes is a really good example. Bad living has led to this point where you need medication now.
Mhm.
So the fear then motivates people to then improve their diet and go train. And I think it's sad that we have to have this shock, this stimulus.
Mm.
Why do we have to get to that oh shit moment
Mhm.
in order to take action, to make something a priority? And it's about, for me, it's about just saying, listen, this is preventative. This is because I don't want to get there. The hard thing is trying to find, like, the hardest thing I think is to, first of all, seek support, seek help, seek expertise. This is why you're so great. What you're trying to do is so great because we're so busy with our lives and all kind of balancing and spinning plates and trying to be the best leaders we can be. Suddenly, we do need sometimes that external voice, that external person saying, checking in. How you doing? How are we doing on this? How are we doing that? Accountability. Accountability is exceptionally good for getting us to do what we want to do. And I think when you start looking at lifestyle changes, it's huge, especially if you've had a bad lifestyle up to that point, because you have to change so many different aspects, which makes it even harder if you have people around you who aren't willing to change. You have kind of influences in your life, so you're trying to change, but they're not trying to change with you, and it's very easy to then revert back. So to have somebody that you're accountable for is really valuable. So what you're doing for a lot of people will be extremely valuable because most people don't have the ability, or they've lived so many years of this poor lifestyle that they need some support to help keep them on track.
Yeah.
Hopefully through the leadership development, if they are in this bubble of people who are going to pull them back down, then hopefully their leadership skills will also develop. Hopefully they have great leadership skills so they can bring them along with them.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can get them to buy into that vision of like a nirvana up here, that they can then actually all get better and improve their lifestyle together. Because there's a great book, Willpower. Willpower doesn't work. And it talks about environment a great deal. And I know Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers talks about environment a great deal. And so your environment is critical to achieving all of the outcomes. So, this is all stuff that you will kind of obviously discuss with them and which individuals have to challenge themselves to overcome. Because again, if we're going to try and reach that nirvana, whatever it looks like, you've got to have a very clear vision of exactly what that looks like. Okay, so that's something that you can help with, because quite often we don't know. We kind of know that we're not happy in our own wherever we are, but we know that we want something better. We don't quite know what that is, and we also don't know the journey in order to get there.
Yeah.
And that's why having somebody to kind of walk you through those steps and create a plan with you, I think that's why you're doing what you're doing, and I think you're going to help a lot of people through your skill sets and through what you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thanks for saying that, Simon. Hopefully it continue to help even more people than it already is. The key thing I'm seeing at the moment is giving people a different viewpoint, because they can only see outwards, whereas I can see them the opposite way. It's trying to unheighten people's lack of capacity, because they have hardly any in all areas of their life, and it's ultimately just trying to minimize stress by maximizing fulfillment, really, and just readjusting things. But it ultimately comes down to trying to encourage people to be more proactive and less reactive. And that's really difficult when you're in a leadership position and you're under incredible amounts of stress and pressure. So again, one for another episode. We could talk about this forever.
I love chatting to you.
Just see, well, likewise. So just to wrap up, because I know we both have to crack on with things today. What would you say your key piece of advice would be to help make someone a better leader, and particularly in the sports industry? So whether they're an exec, a director, a coach, or an athlete.
Be there for you so you can be there for others. Okay. Look after yourself. Do what you need to do to be your best self. Be selfish where you need to be selfish, and be generous when you have the capacity. Being a good leader is often a matter of perspective. We all strive to be the best version and the best leaders we can be. To be the best leaders we can be, since none of us are natural leaders, or very few of us can claim to be natural leaders, we all must appreciate there is a huge amount of skills, there's a huge amount of knowledge, and there's a great deal of experience that must be learned. Yep. And it's a lifelong pursuit. So don't expect to be a great leader immediately. It's incremental. You've got to work at it. You've got to work at it every day and reflect. And one of my favorite things I used to do every single morning was write a journal to myself. Every single day I would start with writing a journal email. I would send it to a folder, and I'd start off the day with 3 big things I wanted to achieve, and then write down my thoughts and reflections. And getting it out on paper first thing in the morning allowed me bandwidth, space to think and consider how I was going to approach that day. Okay. And I felt that was probably one of the most valuable things. And my final takeaway is vision. If you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get other people to follow you? Okay. Be very clear in your mind what you're trying to achieve. Smart goals. Mm-hmm. Take the time to write some smart goals. They are incredibly powerful when done properly, when done well. Get your team to write smart goals. Have a conversation with them about where they want to be, what they want to do. Tell them what you want to be, where you want to be, what you want to do, what you're trying to achieve. Quite often, bad leaders are interpreted as bad leaders because there's a lack of communication or a breakdown of communication, or communicating in different language where different personality types, just one person says one thing. I mean, we've all had it with our partners. You know, you're not hearing me. I'm telling you. Okay, Mars and Venus. It's the same for employees. Empathy.
Yep.
Get out of your head and into theirs.
Brilliant. Love it, Si. Really, really good. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so I do appreciate it. And I know that the listeners have got a lot of golden nuggets there to take away with them and digest. So much appreciated. And as always, great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Ryan. You take care. Have a great day. Speak soon.
Thanks for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. It would be really helpful if you please leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Is there someone you know who would benefit from hearing what you've just heard? Then help them out by sending a link. Be sure to check out the website www.ryanblakeperformancecoaching.com that has details about free tools which include the RBPC blog, more information about this podcast, taking the Performance Profile Online Assessment, joining the Sports Leadership Online Community, the Elite Impact Online Education course, the Elite Potential Online Coaching Program, the Elite Influence In-Person Consultancy, and how to get in touch if you have any questions. Follow on social media at LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, Facebook and YouTube. Links to these can be found at the bottom of all website pages and via any search engine. Until next time, take care.